Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar Empathy to Impact How UX Drives Success and Strategic Alliances. I'm so glad you could join us. Now, while I give everybody some time to join, I would love to give a brief introduction about me, Baywan, and why we are hosting this webinar. My name is Neha, and I'm an AVP of Enterprise Accounts here at Baywan, and I'll be the host and moderator for today's discussion. At Baywan, we believe that user experience is more than just design. It's the connective tissue between empathy and real business outcomes. For years, we've partnered with leading organizations to deliver solutions that not only meet business goals, but also truly serve the people who use them. Our approach is rooted in human centered thinking because when we start with empathy, we create an impact that lasts. So, why are we hosting this webinar? We are hosting this conversation because the role of UX in shaping business success has never been more critical. Organizations are realizing that empathy isn't just a nice to have, it's the driver of measurable outcomes from customer loyalty to market growth. What excites us most is how program management, account management, and UX can come together to bridge that gap. From understanding user needs to building the strategies and structures that turn empathy into impact. That's why we've invited Becca, Bayvan's lead UX program manager, to share her expertise. She's been at the forefront of helping clients connect empathy driven design decisions to strategic outcomes at scale. Today's discussion is not about buzzwords or abstract frameworks. It's about the practical, everyday ways leaders and teams can harness empathy to unlock innovation, strengthen partnerships, and deliver lasting results. And now, without much further ado, I would love to introduce our guest today, Becca. Becca is the lead UX program manager at Bayone, where she helps top tech clients innovate user experiences in emerging technology. She works with cross functional teams to make products more efficient, accessible, and user centered. Before joining Bayone, she drove DEI strategic product inclusion work at PayPal and facilitated research based DEI work at Stanford University with Fortune 500 clients. She holds Bachelor's of Arts in Law, Societies, and Justice and Gender Studies from the University of Washington and a UX UI design certificate from Springboard. Becca, welcome and thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Thank you, Neha. Likewise.
Wonderful. So now, before we get into the depths of the conversation today, I want to start us off with something simple, something that needs more going into in depth. When we talk about UX, design usually takes the spotlight, but there's another piece that really keeps everything moving smoothly: program management. So, what exactly is program management? And why does it matter in the UX space? Now, before I ask this question to Becca, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please share your views about this in chat, and we would love to hear them.
Sure. So thank you. It's a great question to start us off. The way I think about UX program management, it's really about enabling our teams to understand what are the user needs that drive those design decisions. It's kind of the strategic role, right? It combines empathy and innovative thinking to create experiences that meet those business goals and ideally lasting impact on people's lives. From the UX program manager role perspective, I think of it as this connective tissue. It turns these user empathy experiences into real business impact when done well. Our jobs might be to bring, designers and engineers and product teams together to deliver and build products at scale. And we want to make sure we're not just creating these cool features, but that every design decision is grounded in this deep understanding of what do users actually need, driving measurable impact across our clients.
Wonderful. Thank you, Becca. That really brings it home. UX program management isn't just about process, it's about making sure empathy drives execution. It's what connects user needs to business goals and ensures the experiences we deliver truly make an impact. We've been talking about empathy as a foundation of UX, but it's not always clear how that translates into real outcomes. From your perspective, Becca, as a project manager working closely with the UX teams, what does empathy to impact actually look like in practice?
Sure. So empathy to impact, which I love this phrase, from my perspective, really means moving from a feeling to a function. So it's this deliberate process of transforming these deep user understandings into measurable positive outcomes. So in other words, it's not enough just to know our users are frustrated with a certain function or feature. Our job is to really understand exactly why, and then design a solution that eliminates that friction and hopefully sparks joy. This isn't really about guesswork. It's about moving beyond feature building and using that data to inform our design decisions. When teams create these thoughtful, purposeful experiences that meet our business goals, but also solve real-world problems for our users. So in other words, how do we make this actionable on our own teams? I'll share 2 key tips. One is don't just observe, but immerse. So go beyond reading that research report. Watch a user kind of struggle and work through an issue. Listen to their frustration and feel it for yourself. That emotional connection is what fuels some of the best design decisions longer term. And secondly, the other piece of advice I would share that we've learned doing this work is that we connect every decision to a user insight. So before we build anything, we ask, which user problem does this solve? And if we can't answer that question, we might be building the wrong thing. So this simple practice ensures that every effort is grounded in empathy and has a clear path to impact.
I love this, and absolutely right. That's a great reminder that empathy only creates impact when it's turned into designs that truly solve user problems. Now, empathy often comes alive through real stories and experiences. Can you share an example where deep empathy for end users shaped a project decision that ultimately drove client success?
Absolutely. So in a previous role, to share a story, to advance the UX design and accessibility experience with a leading tech client, we realized that raw data was not moving the needle enough. And we needed to really bring these product leaders along with us on the journey. And so to engage this leadership team along the way and to deepen the experience of cross-digital and physical friction points, we partnered with a nonprofit. We partnered with a nonprofit called the Blind Cafe, where we transformed, if you can imagine, a typical conference room into this dining in the dark experience. And this is when we had a team of visually impaired community moderators crafting a dining in the dark experience for everybody to experience at the same time. So the aha moment, in other words, this led to this organic conversation of, wow, if it's difficult for me to even place the fork into my mouth during this meal together as a sighted or visually abled person, how might a user who's visually impaired complete an action on a phone or an app? And this really, shifted the conversation and centered the diversity of needs from users' experiences from day one. So what did this do? This immersive learning sparked this curiosity-driven reevaluation across teams. We moved from to a proactive design shift and ultimately investing in accessible design systems and making accessibility a core or foundational requirement in agile sprint planning. So the takeaway, right? What was the takeaway from this experience? It demonstrated the impact of designing with users' needs at the forefront and unlocking innovation for everyone. So in a nutshell, my actionable advice would be create those shared experiences that directly inform design decisions whenever possible, implement co-design practices and design with those communities in partnership, build in storytelling and imagery that brings your data to life. And when we can better understand user challenges, it fuels our commitment to better, more accessible innovation solutions at scale.
That is such a powerful example of how empathy moves from theory into action, showcasing real design shifts that drive both accessibility and innovation. Really love that example, Becca. Thank you for sharing it. Now, one of the themes we've been touching on today is collaboration. UX doesn't happen in a vacuum. It relies on strong partnerships across roles. So let's talk about this. When program management and account management work hand in hand in UX, what changes in the experience?
Sure. So, like you said, I think it really moves the relationship from a transactional one to the strategic partnership. By having a holistic view, we can ensure that every deliverable is not only delivered on time, but it aligns with our clients' long-term business strategies. So this synergy allows us to anticipate our client needs and proactively identify those opportunities for integrate innovation and growth in the future.
Love that. And from the account management side, I'd add that this collaboration really deepens trust in clients. When program management ensures flawless execution and account management brings the client's strategic priorities into the mix. Together, we create experiences that are both impactful for users and aligned with long term business goals. Now, we've talked about how account management and program management complement each other in theory. But let's make it more real. Can you share an example of a time when strong alignment between these roles led to a significant positive outcome for a client?
Sure. Yes. So, for example, more recently on a project, we were working with a client on a top tier UX research team. And as we got engaged with this team, we noticed a significant bottleneck, which may be a familiar experience for others on our call today. Their need was clear, right? They needed to move and scale their research operations to meet increasing demand quickly. However, this lack of clarity around, what resources might be available was this major pain point, and it really held the team back. Research leads were spending up to a full week on allocating resources, really holding back the team's velocity. And so this challenge led us to frame this question: how might we reduce the time managers spend on resource allocation so that they can, create business priorities and create a more consistent and balanced experience for the research team? And if I might add, the true value that we delivered wasn't just process optimization, it was a user-centered approach to organizational design. We applied UX principles to their internal team, which allowed us to map talent to the most critical business priorities. So, for example, what did this look like? It could have been weekly cross-functional syncs to address these blockers. It also involved building out dashboards for a more unified view of what the team's bandwidth looks like in real time. And my favorite are those one-on-one experiences or sessions with each researcher. We're curious to understand those unique quadrants of ease, challenge, growth, and joy across their work. And so that as we scale our impact across the team, we can ideally match researchers to the work that lights them up and also moves forward those business priorities. I'll also just add to this and say this is credit due in full to our clients' readiness to co-create that solution and the incredible skill and engagement of our Bay One team members. This approach, I'm really proud to share, has been really transformative, changing that 1 week resourcing process into a matter of hours, if not moments. And managers can now make smarter, faster decisions, which in turn gives those researchers a more balanced and fulfilling workload. So the key takeaway is this: apply your UX lens, not just to your client products, but also to your own internal team processes. And we feel like that is where we find the greatest opportunity for impact.
I absolutely agree on that, Becca. Alignment between account management and program management transforms outcomes. By applying a UX lens to internal processes, we unlock clarity, reduce friction, and create space for innovation. That is the true power of partnership. Becca, as we all know, UX is all about creating great experiences. But ultimately, clients care about the measurable results. So, how do you connect the dots between UX decisions and tangible business outcomes?
Great question. I would say for us, it starts with this clear understanding of what is the client's North Star metrics and what is the impact they're aiming to go for. So we want to define how those UX decisions will move those targets. And it might involve experimentation and analysis and ideation. We might not hit it, exactly right on the first time, but what are we learning along the way? We want to explore also actively how AI can help us move beyond correlation to identify those causal links in user behavior across data sets that are getting larger and larger. We want to allow us to pinpoint precisely, right, which UX interventions drive the most significant business impact.
So well said. We start with the client's North Star metrics and ensure every UX decision is tied to moving those needles. By combining experimentation, analysis, and emerging AI insights, we can pinpoint the UX actions that truly drive business impact. Now, data is important, but ultimately, UX is about people. So, what metrics or signals do you look for to confirm that a UX led approach is really driving impact?
Sure. So I would say that it gets to this heart of UX. Sometimes the most profound signals we find are not coming from a dashboard singularly. Our data might tell us that a user dropped off at a specific point in a flow, but it doesn't necessarily tell us why. So to get to that why, we might get into a room and conduct usability testing. And we're not just watching the screen and data sets come through, we're observing things like, what is the user's expression? How are they listening? How are we listening, rather, to those moments of frustration or hesitation? And this is where I think we find that real value. For example, a user might click a button and say, oh, I thought this was going to take me to the next page. And that single moment of verbalized confusion is an insight that truly 1,000 data points couldn't give us. So that's the power of truly immersing ourselves. It reveals the friction that turns a data point into a human story. And that's how I believe we make some of our best design decisions.
Love it. Absolutely. While data points show where users struggle, it's observing their behavior and hearing their reactions that reveal the real insights. Those human moments turn metrics into actionable design decisions that drive meaningful impact. Now, Becca, as we wrap up the webinar, I'd love for you to share a final takeaway for our audience, something that captures the essence of how UX, program management, and account management drive impact. What's the key insight or piece of advice you'd want them to remember as they leave the session today?
Adopt the mindset of user centricity as a driver of innovation. And to do this, start with your user. Before beginning any project, challenge your team to articulate what is the core user problem that we're solving for, and how will we measure that success from the user's perspective. This simple shift ensures that every effort is grounded in a real need and focused on creating that lasting impact.
Thank you, Becca, for sharing these insights. We've covered a lot today about how all these roles come together to drive real impact. Now, we'd love to hear from you, the audience. Let's open it up for the questions. Please type your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to address as many as we can. So this first question comes from one of the LinkedIn users. How can organizations structure processes so that the UX insights and program management prioritize, reinforce each other rather than compete?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think first, it's a great opportunity to highlight maybe the unique value of each of those. So I think about a project manager is focused on a singular deliverable, right? What is the defined scope? How do we deliver that on time and on budget? And a program manager role might be a little bit more broad, right? It's a little bit more strategic. It's concerning how different multiple projects may come together and work to achieve maybe a larger business goal. We're asking questions like, how does the project on an app align with the UX strategy and the company's long-term vision? And so I think when you really combine both of those views about the singular deliverables, but also looking at how it can align with the organizational goals and targets, it creates that cohesive, user and business outcome.
Perfect. Love that response. Thank you. Now, this next question comes from Hitesh. Great insights, Becca. Thank you. Here's my question. In your experience, how can organizations ensure that empathy in UX doesn't just stay at the research and design stage, but actually translates into measurable business impact and stronger strategic partnerships?
Oh, I love this question. Thank you, Hitesh. So I think this question really gets to the practical challenge of how do you advocate for UX in a business-centric environment. And I think a really common experience that we have in this field is we hear folks think of these on the opposite sides of a spectrum when really it can be the same thing. And so one of the most effective ways that we've found to get that buy-in is to stop talking about the features and start talking about the problems and the business impact of the user's experience, right? How do you frame that discussion in a way that leadership teams are going to really understand holistically? And so instead of saying, for example, okay, we need to redesign the user dashboard, we might say something like, our user research shows that 40% of users are abandoning the product experience because the dashboard is too complex, which is costing us X dollars in revenue. And then to add on to that, right, how do we show and not just tell? So we might use, for example, a simple prototype or a single user story to help illustrate that problem and bring it to life. And a leader may really grasp this more in a more tangible way as a way to create that shared experience and make the problem feel really real and urgent for the users. Does that answer your question?
I think it did. Great
All right.
insights. Wonderful. This next question is coming from Tabitha. How do you consider the user within a broader system? Systems thinking, not just in isolation.
Oh, great question, Tabitha. Thank you. And I would also just chime in and say, if folks have other ideas or solutions that come to mind, continue to share these in the chat. We want this to be a shared learning experience as well. So your question, Tabitha, is a good one. How do we consider the user within a broader system, not just in isolation? I think it's a yes and question. And I think the context matters in terms of what product or experience we're talking about. But overall, how do we design for folks with different experiences or abilities, and that we really recognize that each and every one of those experiences is valuable. We heard last month from Eldita and team on accessibility and how do you practice co-design? How do you think about things like the curb cut experience as a forum to create more innovative products overall?
Great insights. Wonderful. Next question comes from another LinkedIn user. You mentioned AI as a tool for finding casual links in user behavior. How do you see AI reshaping the future of UX program management? Interesting question.
Yeah, I love that. So first of all, I think one of the things that we chatted about last month as well, which is, this phrase, which I love that they added, AI as a tool, right? It's a tool in the way that we approach UX. It's not the kind of driver or be all end all. I think the best outcomes and learnings that we have is when we utilize AI as a tool responsibly, as a way to take our findings to the next level. I'll also just again encourage folks in the chat. What are ways in which you're finding AI as a usable tool as you develop your research or even your design practices? Would love to continue the conversation here as well.
And just to add to that, Becca, are you seeing that narrative change in the program management side also with the AI shift happening? How is that happening? Share your thoughts on this.
Sure. And likewise, Neha, I would love to hear yours as well. Absolutely. I think that this is the new reality, right, that we're living in, and it's here. And so we get to figure out, how do we best leverage AI as a tool to do the work that we're driving. I think we also have that responsibility of understanding how this works, as well as, what is possible with these outcomes. One of the things that I appreciate the most about working on this team is that we continue to learn from one another. We're constantly exchanging ideas and ways of practice, not only across, our team members, but also with our clients as well.
Absolutely agree with you. And yeah, just to add to that, I think the way we have started using AI is as a partner, right? It's not like we have put everything on it, but it's just another tool that is helping to make processes even better. All right. Moving on to the next question. This question comes from Yogesh. How do you balance empathy-driven design with business constraints like deadlines, budgets, or technical limitations?
Great question, Yogesh. Thank you so much. So again, I think this comes back to the yes and. When we think about the business constraints and deadlines and budgets, we have those constraints in the UX space as well, right? We actually find that the best research and the best outcomes and some of the best designs come with those constraints. So when we think about how do we have a brainstorm session or an ideation session, oftentimes we do things like time boxing, right? We challenge ourselves to say, okay, in the next 12 minutes, how do we create an experience that leads to a design decision for our users? So when we apply this to, our business constraints and our budgets and our technical limitations, how might we actually apply that UX framework to that as well?
Wonderful. Love that. Awesome. We are going to take two more questions. So this next question comes from Anuj. What are the best practices that you find yourself using to translate UX insights to outcomes with PM and other adjacent teams?
Great question. So I think about, we don't usually need a huge budget or a full UX team to start this work and to make it actionable, right? I think anybody can do this work and put it into practice. And so I think three things kind of come to mind. One is, how do we talk to our users? And for this, that might be those stakeholders or those adjacent teams. What are those, pain points? How do they experience those blockers in their work? And that's oftentimes information that is very readily available that people are happy to share. I think too, you make empathy that shared value. You get your entire team, from the developers to the marketing team, to listen to these user interviews, or if you can't share those user interviews, those high-level findings. And then three, how do we create those simple tools to create, wireframes or prototypes? Or in this example, it might be, some sort of, data set to illustrate how those pain points are creating a domino effect. And you can use something as simple as, a Google Sheet or Google Slides to start that up. And you want to continue to get that feedback early and often. And as you build empathy into your process, it's not just in your product as well.
I totally agree. Awesome. And this would be our last question for the day. The question comes from Deepak. If empathy is the foundation and impact is the outcome, what's the next frontier for accessibility in UX? Is it personalization, predictive design, or AI-driven inclusion?
Hi, Deepak. Thank you for the question. First of all, I'll share, for those in the chat, please continue to share your perspectives and experiences as well. Deepak, I think this comes back to what we learned last month, right, with the team. One of the things that I loved hearing about in particular was this emphasis on co-design and how do we deliver and create design in partnership with different communities. And I think about that as the way of learning and designing for and with the end users in mind.
Wonderful. Thank you all for all of your amazing questions and for spending time with us today. This conversation has shown how empathy, program management, and UX come together to create real business impact. My hope is that you're leaving with at least one idea you can bring back to your own teams, whether it's a mindset shift, a new way of framing user needs, or simply making empathy part of every decision you make. A huge thank you to Becca for sharing her experiences and insights, and to all of you for joining us. We hope you'll join us next month for another wonderful and interesting UX topic. The topic will be When Still Meets Moving, the love story between visual and motion design. We'll have a fun back and forth discussion on where visual ends and motion begins with real world examples. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing you with the next webinar. Until then, have a great day. Bye-bye.